When the city's population reached 250,000 people, they passed a law that said they would give out one more pond license. This is what happened in 1995. The good old boys got together and did it. Rick Harrison's life after Pawn Stars has been full of hardships and sadness. As a child, he lost his sister and had seizures, so he spent a lot of time alone with books. Later, his parents' business failed and he had to deal with early fatherhood, money problems, and 2 failed marriages. He lost his father and went to court with his mother over the pawn shop, even after he became famous. Watch to find out the shocking turns in his life and what might happen in the future. A story about tough times and big wins. Rick Harrison was born on March 22, 1965, to Richard and Joanne Harrison. He was one of 4 children and grew up in a busy home. But he wasn't carefree in his early years. His sister Sherry, Joanne, died, which was very sad and left a hole in the family that never really healed. As if that wasn't bad enough, he began having seizures when he was 8 years old. Because of these events, he spent a lot of time in bed reading. He loved reading a lot of different kinds of books, but The Great Brain became his favorite. He would always love hearing stories about smart plans and interesting facts from the past. This is a wonderful collection. It's so rare to see things like this, and it scares me to death. I mean, fake money and IDs from the Secret Service? Things like this can get me into trouble. But Rick had no idea that the turns and twists in his own life would be just as exciting as the ones in his favorite books. Things kept getting hard for him as he grew up. Their real estate business failed by the time he was in high school. There wasn't much money, so Rick did what he could to help. His girlfriend Kim got pregnant when he was 17. This was another big event in his life. Their first child did not make it, but soon after, in April 1985, they welcomed their son Corey into the world. Rick and Kim tried hard to build a life together, but in the end, they broke up. He married Tracy less than a year later, and she helped him raise Corey and then his second boy, Adam. At this point, Rick was really into the world of pawning. Rick agreed with his dad Richard's plan to open a coin shop in Las Vegas. He was good at making people feel like they were getting more than just stuff. He told a story about everything. John Howard McGrath is the Attorney General of the United States. He has a Secret Service ID. Okay, he got some letters from J. Edgar Hoover that were signed. He got away with it. Their shop stood out because of this skill, but it wasn't easy to run a business. To make ends meet, he got a second job, taking back cars. Think about how stressful it would be to have a family, a shop, and a job where people don't like seeing you. Rick and his dad finally opened the gold and silver pawn shop in 1989 after some hard years. It didn't happen overnight. There were many rules for the pawn shop business, such as limiting permits based on the number of people living in the area. Their first chance to get one wasn't until Las Vegas had 250,000 people. The first thing they did when they got the go-ahead was focus on unique historical items and sports collectibles, but they quickly found out that the real money was in the jewelry. The big break then came. In 2008, TV producers Brent Montgomery and Colby Gaines toured Las Vegas and thought a pawn shop could make a great reality show. With the shop's odd vibe and Rick's dream of being on TV, Pawn Stars was born. But behind the success, Rick's personal life was coming apart. His second marriage ended in divorce, and even though he fell in love with Deanna again, their marriage also ended in divorce. Things didn't get better. He lost his father, Richard, in 2018. He was friendly on the show and was called the Old Man. After reading this rule, I thought, see, it has to be close to that now for the city proper there. I began calling the city's analyst every week. The death of his dad was a huge loss for him, both emotionally and professionally. All of a sudden, he was the only captain of the family business ship. As if the world pandemic wasn't bad enough, Rick's family problems were once again in the news. He was sued by his mother, Joanne, who said he stole her share of the pawn shop's income. She said that while she was still healing from a coma, he got her to give up 51% of the shop's value. A family split up by money and hatred was shown in a messy way in the court case. Rick denied what was said, but the damage to his image was already done. He was able to keep going despite everything. His son Corey and close friend Chumley were by his side and helped him run the pawn shop when things got rough. To start over, Rick even fell in love again and married Amanda Palmer. His story shows that even success comes with its fair share of problems, whether it's running a business, being on TV, or dealing with personal problems. Rick's life wasn't always wonderful. His health problems made his family's sadness over losing Sherry, Joanne, even worse. His love of history, science, and tactics grew during those early years. He was the kind of kid who, in addition to reading a lot, found comfort in learning. He also had big dreams for the future. He became passionate about running the shop because he loved telling stories and finding out hidden facts. He was very busy as a teenager, and he didn't just sell fake Gucci bags, he also did some other work on the side because he was always looking for ways to make money. He learned how important it is to work hard, and these events also showed him how good he was at seeing opportunities where others didn't. In a business where everything has a story to tell, it's easy to see why he found his calling in pawn. Rick was already very much into business by the time he opened the gold and silver pawn shop with his dad. The shop's early days were not at all exciting. Every buyer helped Rick and his dad build their good name over many hours. After that, I always bought and sold things. I wanted to open a pawn shop like my dad did with his small coin shop. You have to deal with all sorts of people when you work in the pawn business, they learned quickly. Some were there to get a quick loan, while others wanted to sell things they didn't know were important. Because he can connect with people and talk about the past of the things in the shop, it stands out. As the store grew, so did his ambition. He didn't just want to make his business great, he wanted to make something famous. When Pawn Stars came out, that dream came true. People could see what it's like to work as a pawn shop owner on the show, which combined teaching with fun. In each show, he talked about something different, like ancient coins or rare sports memorabilia. His love of history was clear. On the other hand, fame came with problems. It wasn't easy to balance the needs of the show with the realities of running a business. Making sure fans were happy and running the day-to-day business of the shop at the same time often put him under a lot of stress. He was always committed to his family and his work, no matter how hard things got. His personal life became just as important to his story over the years as the pawn shop. People watched as he got married and divorced, became a dad, and interacted with his parents. It was especially hard for him when his father died. It was the end of an era for the Harrison family. There was a big hole in the shop and the show where the old man used to be because he was always there. He was tested in ways he hadn't planned for by the problems caused by the pandemic. With fewer people and less money coming in, the shop was having the same money problems that many other businesses around the world are. His willingness to change, from lowering interest rates to giving customers more open terms, showed that he cared about his community. There was more to the shop than just making money for him. It helped a lot of people get through hard times. He had to deal with the effects of the pandemic during this time. The case his mother filed made things even more complicated for him. Family problems were brought to light by the court case, which made people think about trust and loyalty. The accusations hurt a man whose reputation was built on family and past. But his strength shone through as he continued to face these problems with the same drive that had made his career what it was. The first parts of Rick's trip were hard and changed him from the start. Sweet deals and candy dreams. Pawn Stars is all about making a lot of cash by selling strange and unique items. Fans have been drawn to the oddball team behind it for years thanks to their sharp tongues and strange personalities, but guess what? Chum Lee is the richest person in the group, even though everyone thinks he's a bit of a jerk. The friendly star, whose real name is Eston Lee Russell and who was born in Henderson, Nevada in early September 1982, is more than just the funny guy on TV. From being a kid who liked to collect weird things to a reality TV star with good business sense, his life has been full of interesting events. It's likely that this performer learned how to deal with people by growing up in Las Vegas, where hustle is just part of everyday life. His mom worked in a restaurant and his dad was a DJ. These are two jobs that scream Las Vegas like a bright sign. The TV star learned how to trade and bargain when she was very young. People didn't become rich overnight. He worked on it for a long time before the lights came on. He grew up with Corey Harrison, who was the son of Rick Harrison, the big boss of the pawn shop. It was there that they would become famous one day. Rick and his dad Richard, who everyone called the Old Man, opened that shop in 1989. It became their hangout. The young man who would become a businessman was already working at the gold and silver pawn shop when he was in his teens. He did the dirty work, like cleaning and running errands, for about 5 years while he learned how the business worked. When the idea of making the pawn shop into a reality show came up, the funny person wasn't even sure they would be in it. That job could have been filled by at least 10 other people. He did have an edge, though, because he was close with Corey, and the two of them naturally got along on TV. The Chill Team member wasn't trying to put on a show. He thought that being himself would help him stand out. The producer liked the vibe of being carefree and silly. He quickly became an important part of the show. It was a big deal when Pawn Stars came out on the History Channel in 2009. The whole cast became well known. All of a sudden, fame, money, and crazy chances came flying at them. But don't be fooled by how calm you seem. The businessman worked hard behind the scenes. He made his own brand of weird stuff like t-shirts, doll heads, and other things that sold like crazy. It was a smart move for Rick Harrison to buy half of his company for a cool $155,000 in 2010. This change made it easy to deal with all the orders from fans. The businessman was smart enough to do more than just sell funny things with his face on them. He had bigger plans. The candy store he opened in 2017 was right across the street from the pawn shop on the parade route. It was a good idea. If tourists were really hungry, they could just cross the street to get some sugar. The business did really well with the help of his brother Sage. But there were some rough spots when I first opened my candy shop. He tried to open an online store, but all the good domain names were already taken. The owner couldn't give in to the squatter's high price, so he had to come up with a new plan. The health path comes next. Talk about good and bad times. By giving up bad food and following a strict diet, he lost more than 100 pounds at one point. But it wasn't easy to keep the weight off. He put on about 50 pounds again by 2016. He gained and lost weight until 2021, when he finally chose to have gastric sleeve surgery. After that, he was able to keep his weight at about 190 pounds. He stayed busy even though his personal life was going through a lot of ups and downs. He became a disc jockey and even went to a real school to learn the trade. His first gig got a lot of attention, in part because a reporter asked him to bring Girl Scout cookies and some interesting company. Another idea he had was to become a talent agent for Las Vegas singers, but things haven't always been fine. Early in 2016, the reality star got into a lot of trouble. A police raid on his house, which was caused by an investigation into a sexual attack claim, found a lot of drugs and weapons. Among the charges against him were 19 for drugs and 1 for guns. He looked very bad in public after the incident. He was able to get back on track, though. Later that year, he made a deal to plead guilty to a felony guns charge and go on probation for 3 years. The other charges were dropped to state crimes. Even though the whole thing hurt his image, it didn't mean the end of his career. Even though there was trouble, the businessman kept working in the field. His candy shop kept doing well, and he tried his hand at other businesses. He made a weird video game called Chumley's Adventure: The Quest for Pinky that looks like it came from the 1980s. He was able to get enough money to make the game, which was made to work on old Nintendo systems. He likes cars, too. A Maserati and a Rolls-Royce Phantom are just a few of the amazing cars that the collector has collected over the years. These aren't just toys. They show how far he has come since he worked in a pawn shop. Besides everything else, the performer really cares about helping people. In 2014, he helped Anti-Up for Autism raise money for autism research. He clearly loves making money, but he is also willing to help others when it's needed. His personal life has also been full of ups and downs. In 2013, he met Olivia Rodman, and by 2018, they were engaged. The next year, they got married in a small celebration. Things seemed to have calmed down by 2020, though. There were reports that the couple might have broken up because they stopped posting pictures of themselves online together. Even so, they liked each other's social media posts sometimes, which showed that they respected each other. The star has also shown that she is very smart when it comes to real estate. He made a good return when he sold his Las Vegas home for almost $1,400,000 in 2019, since he had bought it for just over $1 million 7 years before. It was a huge space. It's on 2 acres and has a main house, a guest house, and a pool that a rock star would love. Everything changed when the show started, where all the gold is in Las Vegas. A little show called Pawn Stars aired on the History Channel in the late 2000s, before streaming took over the world. It wasn't just about selling old stuff. This really was the goldmine for Rick Harrison and his group. Rick and his dad, Richard Benjamin Harrison, who everyone called the Old Man, ran a popular gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas. The show was set in a city known for its bright lights. This wasn't just a dusty corner store, it turned into a place where people went to buy weird, old, and sometimes way too expensive things. Rick Harrison was the clever one who planned everything. He had been able to tell the difference between real and fake things for years, so he knew how to talk down people who were trying to get rich quickly. He was good at telling stories about all the strange things that came in the door. Rick was smart about everything in the shop, from old coins to guitars. He also made sure the cash register kept ringing. Then there was Rick Harrison's son Corey, who didn't just get into the business because of his last name. The big hoss Corey learned how to buy and sell things early on because he grew up with it. Finally, he became manager and oversaw the day-to-day tasks as well as some of the shop's most important deals. He had a good eye for seeing what was important and what should be left behind. Austin Chumley Russell was the wild card in this show. Chumley was hired to work the floor because he was friends with Corey from youth, but he quickly became a fan favorite. He was often the target of jokes about how dumb he was, but don't be fooled. Chumley knew a lot about pinball games and old-school toys. Fans loved how silly he was, and he kept things funny. And of course, Richard Harrison, the old man, was there from the beginning. His strict attitude kept everyone in line. The man had been in the business for a long time, long before reality TV came along. He knew the pawn game inside and out. He was the shop's steady hand until he died in 2018. He was always ready with a wry remark or a suspicious look when something seemed odd. What made Pawn Stars different from other reality shows was that people always brought in weird, unusual, and even scary things. But Rick and his team didn't guess what something was worth without any proof. A group of experts watched over them to make sure they weren't being ripped off. People who knew a lot about cars and bikes, like Danny Coker, would stop by when someone brought in an old car or bike. He went on to have his own show called Counting Cars, but people still knew him at the pawn shop. Becky Romney was called in when old books showed up. She knew a lot about rare books and papers and could tell the shop if a dusty book was worth a lot of money or was just pretty to put on a shelf. Also, don't forget about Steve Grad, the master on autographs. Whenever someone came in saying they had baseball or Hollywood memorabilia to sign, Steve was the one who checked to make sure they were real. The show didn't just stay famous over the years, it blew up into a huge event. It was said that Rick, Corey, and Chumley were making about $25,000 per show by 2016. When you think about how many episodes they shot each season, that was a great deal. As her fame grew, she made even more money from advertising, side jobs, and appearing in public. They were no longer just running a pawn shop, they were a brand. What made the show so interesting was not only the bargaining and background behind the items, but also how well the actors got along with each other. People couldn't get enough of the mix of Rick's straightforward style, Corey's more laid-back attitude, Chumley's pranks, and the old man's rough but wise attitude. People watched, not only to see what crazy things people would try to sell, but also to see how this family and their friends ran a business together, and sometimes against each other. The shop is still open for business, and the cameras are still rolling in January 2025. Rick is still in charge, Corey is in charge of the big purchases, and Chumley is just being himself and making things fun and light. Fans keep coming back because it has a mix of history, strange things, and familiar names that they have seen for more than 10 years. Pawn Stars found its own place in the history of reality TV. Some shows are flashy and over the top, but this one wasn't. It was all about the deal, the wealth, and the people who made it happen. The Harrison family was at the center of it all. They made what could have been just another pawn shop into a societal icon. One thing stayed clear through it all. Rick and his family became famous and rich because of this show more than anything else. People were interested in more than just the main cast. A lot happened because of the people who came into the shop with their strange things.